So now recording this session, and it's our opportunity to dive in and cover off the topics that are important to everybody today. And so the first thing that I want to touch on as a reminder to everybody is that, just stay on mute when you're not chatting, but of course come off of mute when you want to ask questions, or you can of course type your questions into Slack. The seminar is definitely an opportunity for you guys to be interactive. And so, probably we'll call you guys to come off of mute from time to time. And then we can take it from there. And again, of course, the session is being recorded. In this particular session, I do not have a presentation because it is designed to be a seminar where we get a chance to just kind of interactively talk about things. But I do have some suggested topics, which actually are carryover topics from Seminar 1. And so before maybe I start diving in and asking some questions, maybe I'll see if Sana is available to come off of mute so she can say hi, and then also see if Sana has any topics that she wants to cover off as well. So Sana, just hand it over to you for a minute and see what you may want to cover today as well. All right, I think Sana might have some kids waking up and getting ready to go off to daycare and to school, so I'm gonna step in here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of around the table and see how everybody's doing. Maybe we'll start with Zareen. Zareen, how are you guys doing right now on this journey of financial sustainability? Would love to hear how you guys are doing and what kind of questions and burning issues you guys have.
Hi, Keith. So right now, like basically our financial sustainability is coming from consultancies. So we have a research consultancy that we have with UNDP that is coming to an end, and then we have two projects that they haven't finalized as yet, but we are like constantly working in collaboration to like having constant. Our times are like in mind, like 80% of my day is just following up for those two contracts. So they're 80% done, but like I know they're chasing is something that you constantly have to do, because like the person who has to sign is like traveling and all that. So it hasn't been finalized, but majorly it is with corporate sponsors, and also with one of them is but like both of them are with like corporate sponsors. So majorly we are looking at working with corporations and then pitching them social innovation projects with something to do with their CSR. Okay. So that's majorly. And the other thing we're hoping to is also develop a training module. We'll hope after our visit to New Zealand with Akina, and like a training module on regenerative development and design. With that, I think unfortunately our New Zealand trip has been deferred. So we will finalize that thing after we have met with Akina and have concluded our visit.
Okay. Yeah. What has the response been like so far for you in the community of corporates around working with them? How are they responding to like your introduction? How are they responding to the idea of having your organization assist in the process?
So one of the organizations we've already corporations we've already worked for, we've held them in helped them in a previous project, like developing sort of a grant for social enterprises, so they know us. The problem is not like they know what they work and we, what sort of work we do, and we know like the people there as well. But it's just like people that we're in touch with are traveling, and then there's like this other person is involved, and he's new, so he doesn't know our work or us so much, so that took time to like develop some sort of a relationship building. But like we know that it's going to happen, but it's just it just takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Like people travel, when they come back they want to like set up a meeting, and then like they want to further flesh out the project. So like what we so that sort of thing that is happening. The other corporation is somewhat that's a new that's someone that we met recently, and they liked our work, and they were like, okay, this is something that we want to do. So this sort of kind of reached out to us. So in that way it's good. So we're still in the process of kind of finalizing, like kind of negotiate, like not negotiating, but like kind coming finalizing what sort of a project that what can we can offer them and what they want us to do, and then figuring out, okay, what's the best fit for them. So that's in the process of like we've had our initial meeting, and they've told us that what they liked and what they would want us to do according to that. It's somewhat looking like a CSR program as well, and one of the startups that we work with around food wastage. So they have a hospital that they do that they do like these free meals sort of stuff, and we have a startup that works on food wastage. So we might be doing something along those lines. So how to like create the philanthropy, like philanthropic work can be generated into like creating daily meals at the hospital or something like that. So we're still in the process of like figuring out how would that work with the organization. And it's a new geography we haven't worked. It's like it's in a rural village in Punjab, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's, I think the way that you've described the way the relationship is unfolding is I think fantastic, because as you say, like taking that initial meeting where you're learning about what they want, what they don't want, what they like, what they don't like, gives you an opportunity to come back to them and frame a proposal that will work for them, which is great. In your context, do you guys provide formal proposals with with costing, with timeframes, or does it tend to be a little bit more informal?
So this one, like the second meeting was the one with the food waste, that was very informal. So that we met like one of their company people, like the CSR people, at one of these events, like these startup events, and they were like, oh, we know about your works, and we just like I just set up a meeting with them. So there's no formal proposal as yet. There will be a formal proposal now that we've had an initial meeting and sort of know what sort of areas they want us to work in. So now I'll start working on a formal proposal. There isn't a formal proposal yet. In the second one, there we all are already like we knew what sort of work that they were looking for, so we had sent them a formal proposal directly, and we were just waiting for them to approve that and approve costing. So that's why it's taking time.
Okay. And with the proposals that you have out now, you talked about 2 that you're kind of following up with and about 80% done. If you were to secure both of those projects, what does it mean for you from a workload perspective? Like, would it make you very busy? Would it make you a little busy? Yeah.
So they're going to make us very busy, but for like at the end of this year. Like they're short like 6 to 8 months line gig. So it's like they kind of secure us for like this year probably, but like they're not something that are long term. So that means that like they'll for me it's not, they're not going to be like, once these things are done like it's 100% and we have them on board, then my team members will take on the operating and implementation on thing, and then I would probably still have to think about the long term.
Right.
So like in a business development perspective, they'll be like 40% of my time, because I'll still be the contact, the focal person, but the implementation side of things, I'll be handing it over to the team members.
So do you find that you're spending time every single week on business development to try and make sure that in the long term that you guys have enough projects to keep you busy?
So like I said, so in the long term, we don't have enough projects to keep us busy for like, as in like I would say long term for me would be like at least for the next, like securing a good like work for for the next 2 years. So then possibly not. Like we there is at least me, like I personally need to spend more time on like thinking of like what other possible projects can I pitch for like after December. Like what can we do in 2020?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've secured ourselves for this year, for like end of 2019, but like what can we do post, like from January 2020, what should be like our plan? Like what are we doing after we're done with this? And
Mm-hmm.
these are like because like they're so like both of the projects are on different nature. So like for example, if we have like two people working on design and like on design and then training, then possibly if we're doing a training project, the training person, the person who's handling like who our design and strategy lead would probably be busy in designing the trainings and stuff. But that's also not like her 100% of her job. Like she'll still have time to do another like other things as well. So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of it, they capacity wise, there's definitely something that we have the capacity to take on something like a third project for this year, definitely. Or if not a third project, constantly like a third project ideally would be doing something on regenerative thing. That's something that like I really like, or as a team we're really hoping to do that, because that's also like a long term strategy as well. Like how if we do, like right now we have our like sort of our incubation on hold, but for our next cycle we really do want to take that regenerative lens into our incubation cycle. Like how can we just, because we already do work on like how to like work on like social enterprise business models, but we also want to look on like social enterprise business models, but how can you make your businesses as sustainable as a whole. So we really want to get into the supply chain and all into those processes. So with
Mm.
the regenerative training and development, we're really hoping to go that route.
Yeah. How do you the regenerative training and the supply chain piece, why do you think that your market is looking for that? So like, how have you proven that that is going to be a need in the marketplace?
So like one of the so Engro Foundation, like it's one of the corporations, like they're really big corporation parks, and we have that, and we've already worked with them on this. We help them develop a social enterprise, and like their foundation has created a social enterprise, which and they're also looked at into. We're now working with them into corporate impact venturing, and
Mm.
their whole purpose is like how they can create social enterprises or incubate social enterprises that help into their own supply chain. So
Mm.
that's one of the piece that we have already working on with Engro Foundation.
Yeah.
So we have that evidence that that's something that we can pitch to other corporates as well, and we're hoping that we can hopefully introduce like some sort of a incubation cycle with one of the corporates for hopefully, like we're also looking into like vertical centric things. Like
Mm.
we take one SDG or like one sector and then work on those. We're ideally also thinking for either like water or sanitation or tourism. These two verticals, we're hoping that, because there are a lot of startups that we have like come across as well who have like really interesting models working on this, like these things, and our sustainable and regenerative development and design lens really works well with these two verticals as well.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Serene, I'm going to make a comment, and then I'm actually going to just refer to a note that Sana put into chat. Um, the the corporate example that you gave of somebody who's looking at this supply chain question, I think is a fantastic example. Sometimes when we at Spring have seen people have such a data point in a marketplace, one of the ways to really sort of elevate the awareness and potentially demand from other corporates is to look at running a like a workshop where you actually talk about this process, and then you actually do that workshop in conjunction with the corporate in question that you're working with. because what it does is it validates the opportunity and the problem set for other corporates. So I'll be very curious, and I think it would be great for you to share with everybody here once you spend that time with Akina, and talking about their process and building up that capability within your team. I wonder if, running a workshop for some of the other corporates where you can bring a group of corporates into a room, talk about this supply chain opportunity, and then use the one corporate that you have as like a case study, if that wouldn't really help to spur demand in the ecosystem for you to do that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've thought about it at all or not, but I just want to highlight that before I referred to Sana's comment.
Yeah, that's something that we have thought about, like, how can we like work with either with Engro and like bring together, because they all like Engro is like a really big corporate in Pakistan. So there's something that like, we've already kind of have done that. So like even with this other food wastage project, that's how we kind of met. Like, we got introduced to these through Engro people as well. So that's something that definitely we've worked at. How can we like work either with Engro, because they have like, they have the capacity and capability to like, do these things with us as well. So that's something that we've definitely thought about. But the piece that like, what exactly do once we're back with our regenerative training, that's something that once we're back, we'll flesh it out further. So like, unfortunately that got delayed. Like we were supposed to be in New Zealand this week, but like our visa haven't come through as yet. So hopefully when we're there and when we're with Chris and Guy, and like, we can have like, with their input, have like better understanding of what's the best way to take this forward.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm gonna I just refer to the question that Sana asked in chat. And so Zareen, she asked a question, how does the decision-making process unfold in Pakistan with corporates? And for the two opportunities that you are pursuing right now, do you believe that you have met the decision maker? So the person who's actually going to write the check and sign the contract.
So we've for one of the projects I've met both the decision makers, but like that thing was that that decision maker was traveling, and like the budgets and the proposal went to another person who was new, who I had met the first time. So so the decision maker knows us, knows our work very well, but he's traveling, so things have gone lulled because of that. So I have to follow with a person who's not a decision maker, and like and obviously like, but he has to still go tell the decision maker, okay, this is all right. So like that process has hopefully happened. Like he's told us like, things that whenever the decision maker is back, we'll do the finalize, like you'll get the check and we'll get the contract signed by you. So that's the only delay, because of like, he has to travel, and I think he'll be back this end of this month. Something like that. But the other for the other project, I had also met the decision maker. The like first meeting I had was with the team and the person who's going to take the head of the corporation as well, who's also, and the head of the CSR as well. So like that's something like the fleshing out or the consultative meeting, as you can say, happened with like with all the stakeholders. So that happens. So we've done the fleshing out, and we just like, so the process that we're just in the process of giving them the costing and proposal right now.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And like, I think Sana has also asked another question, like, has there any been remote training? So what they did is they've shared a lot of like Chris has shared a lot of links with us to like us to start reading up on them. So we have started our, like, we had already started on like, to do our initial readings and to figure out what, but then we haven't had like a back and forth of those readings, because I think Chris was also traveling. He was in Bangkok, and then so we haven't had like a discussion on those readings, but they have shared like a lot of reading material on it.
Great. Yeah, good to hear. And have you taken the time to build out a financial sustainability canvas for your organization?
I'm like, Keith, I'm like, we were really busy with like ending our research project. So I had looked at it and I started filling it out, but I haven't like finished filling it out yet, yes, as yet.
Okay. Yeah, understandable to be sure. And that's something I think you're really going to want to take with you to New Zealand. I would definitely also encourage you um, um, to actually share whatever draft you have with Akina, and don't be shy as well to share it with us. Being myself and Sana and Liv, definitely happy to give you feedback, even if it's in draft form. So,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
one thing that,
I'll do that.
yeah, for sure. And then one thing I might do, Zareen, as an action item is I might actually share with you a sample sales funnel with probabilities for this process of selling projects that we all do. It might be like just a nice tool in your toolbox for kind of managing some of the life cycles of some of the projects, especially as you start to pursue projects for 2020 and beyond, when you are knowing that the current projects that you're in discussions with, as they start to come to a close at the end of the year, just knowing that you're already going to have projects ready for 2020 and beyond would be great, of course. And so I'll share a tool with you to help you manage that, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Keith.
absolutely.
That'll be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, great sharing. Thank you very much, Zareen. That was great. Are there any burning issues or any asks that you have of the group before we move on to another person in the list?
I don't have like burning questions as such, or I mean, ask could be like for like if anyone else is interested into like this corporate supply chains and has any learnings, I'm sure we'll love to read about them or like know on how they handle that and how that happens in their ecosystems. That'll be great learning for us.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure that we post that up in the Slack group as well, so that there can be some good cross learnings there. So that's a fantastic ask. Thank you. Yeah, great. Perfect. Omar, welcome. Glad that you were able to join us. Zareen, thanks so much for that sharing. Maybe what I'll do, Tashbia, if you are interested and able to come off of mute, I would love to have you share where you are in your organization, how things are going for you guys. So if you can come off of mute, that'd be fantastic. And if not, if you can type it in the chat.
Hi, Keith. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I joined through a couple of months ago, so I have some idea of what we're doing. I joined as a senior associate in knowledge management and communications, and basically what we do is two main programs. One is our Impactor program, and the other one is our Impactpreneur program. So Impactor program is supposed to be like you graduate into an Impactpreneur program. So we did a call for applications this time in October, where we launched the Impactor program for the first time. We received, basically we were looking for early stage businesses, less than 2 years, to come join us, and we'll provide them with the business mentorship and seed funding. And we received pretty good interest. We received around 400 applications, out of which we selected like around 30. And then we're finally at the third stage now. We're working with 10 of them. So we had like a couple of workshops and like some assessment before we decided the top 10 out of the 30 that we selected, and now we're working with them. We'll be working with them until June, July, and then one of them can actually graduate into our Impactpreneur program, where they have a long-term. We're already in an MOU with them, but we'll have a different one and a bit more we'll do a bit more with them in that program. But I'm not like with the I've seen the Impact program very closely, but the Impactpreneur program, not so much. And yeah, we also are working to do this Social Innovation Design Week in June. This is from a grant we got from Levi, and that's where we work with people from all different sectors can come in and do this. So we work to find a problem in the garments factory in Bangladesh, because we have so many garments factories. So we try to find a problem there, and then these people get into groups of 6 different groups and then try to find a solution for that problem, that one problem that we identify for them. And whoever, wins, we have a seed funding, and then we don't have seed funding, sorry. We actually we'll create a lab and then try to prototype that problem solution into a prototype, basically. So yeah, those are the few things that we do. I do mostly comms work and knowledge management, so a lot of writing and just a little bit of PR. And we're small. We're like 6 of us right now. So we have business incubation team, comms, knowledge management, and finance admin. That's pretty much it.
Okay, cool. And do you know how you guys are currently funded in terms of like who pays for those programs to run?
Yeah, we have Portigus is our main funder, and we have partnerships with Microsoft, with Standard Chartered Bank, and we have partnerships with IDLC and Sohag Foundation.
Okay. Yeah. And how are you guys currently doing on your financial sustainability? Is it something that you guys feel like you're pretty fully funded, or are there some challenges that you guys are tackling up?
Yeah, we have some challenges. We're currently good for end of this year. We really have to fundraise for next year. So our founder, I don't know if you've heard, but our founder, Saif Kamal, he hasn't been well for a while now. So we've had some challenges with leadership, and we didn't really have somebody. We had like a consultant who kind of joined full time, but then not really. So we're kind of struggling with that a little bit. I mean, our programs are running fine, but the fundraising bit is not happening. Yeah. That's a concern for us.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Do you guys feel like you're trying to just take up the slack as a group and just kind of fill in as best you can while the founder is not feeling well?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, so my question was, is the existing team just trying to do a little bit of fundraising on the side while doing your regular jobs while the founder is unwell?
I'm not too sure about that. I haven't been doing it myself. I'm not too sure if the others are talking about it, but Tamanna can actually fill you up on that. Yeah.
Okay.
The other.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, you've actually been great at participating in some of the past webinars that we've been running through the Frontier Incubators program. As you've been listening to some of the different alternatives, and given that you've been with the group now just for a couple of months, what are you kind of hearing that you think might work for Toru? And what do you think would help you guys to be a little bit more financially sustainable? Do you have any thoughts at this point in time?
I feel like one of the things that we've been struggling with our founder being gone, because it was kind of like a one-man show. So I think it was more of like a learning that, Toru, like the face of Toru was Saif Kamal. So not having Saif Kamal and still, like putting up the brand that Toru has and just, keeping those funder relationships and all of that, and just being in touch with them and regularly communicating with them. Or, you know, he had his way of doing that, and he was doing it all by himself. So I think that's one thing that we kind of struggle with, not having those immediate contacts, or like them not responding to us and only responding to him. And so I think it was more like learnings, and also like just, you know, like taking things as they come, and not really, because we're like, you know, relatively small, and we do sometimes have a lot on our plate, so not being able to like plan long term and be like, okay, you know, this is how we're going to invest on fundraising, and this everybody kind of like everybody does a little bit of everything. When we have a program running, everybody's like on board with facilitating tables to like doing the workshops and all of that. And so whatever is happening in the organization, everybody is kind of doing it together. So there is no separate separation of tasks in like particularly. And I think that's why Ansad was doing the fundraising bit all by himself, or like just going through his connections and not really doing it as, you know, that's my understanding. And those are a few things that I think we learned from his absence.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tashbia, you know, in the role that you're playing, one of the benefits that you have in performing in this kind of communications community role that you're in is that you get a chance to drive communications, or to support communications to, amongst others, partners and prospects for funding. And so one thing I would encourage you to do in the Ask Offer section of Slack, and I think we can actually raise the question to this group as well, is just like how some of the partners, or how some of the organizations here communicate with donors and potential donors around what's happening in the organization, what's coming up, as a means of kind of like sustaining the conversation and sustaining the dialogue. And in your case, especially sustaining it while the founder is sick, right? So with that in mind, I'm just curious if anybody on this call has any observations to share with Tashbia about how your organization communicates with donors and funders on a regular basis to stay top of mind. So does anybody have any tips or tricks or suggestions for Tashbia to help her in the role that she's playing? And I'll just wait a moment just in case somebody wants to type something in or any suggestions. But I would, while we're just waiting to see if someone's going to come off of mute or if someone's going to type something in, Tashbia, I would definitely encourage you to pop that into the Ask Offer. What I will share with you is that at Spring, what we do is we actually have a monthly newsletter cycle that we use with partners and donors, where we update them on what's happening in the organization, wins for the organization, as well as wins for with entrepreneurs, so that we can not only encourage them with what we're doing, but we can also encourage them with what the entrepreneurs are up to, give them an opportunity to find out about what's coming up, new programs, new initiatives, new geographies in certain cases. So we really like to use the newsletter as kind of a driving force for that. The other thing that we like to do is we like to run periodically, so let's say twice a year, we'll run events, which are kind of like spring celebration events, but an opportunity to bring donors, funders, entrepreneurs, and mentors and other people together in a room where we can kind of paint the picture for where Spring is going. And use that as kind of a way to get them engaged. So just sharing a couple thoughts with you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So, yeah, and thanks for sharing that. That's much appreciated. Yeah, any specific asks for the group beyond what we just talked about before I move on to the next person? All right, cool. So Kazi actually earlier in the session actually popped in some commentary into Slack, into the chat, not Slack, but into the chat. And so what I'll do is I'll refer to that. So current sustainability structure for BRAC's Social Innovation Labs is being funded by the parent organization. The ambition right now on the process of streamlining and formalizing our incubation efforts, and Vilgrow is supporting you in that process, which is fantastic. Working on drafting a sustainability strategy with Vilgrow as well, but cautious about how we're going to do it. Right now, we're playing with the idea of submitting unsolicited proposals to institutional donors. We're not planning to charge for our services. And Kazi, I assume that you mean that you're not planning on charging the entrepreneurs for your services. So Kazi, I don't know if you're comfortable coming off of mute or not. If you are, it would be great to have you do that. If not, we can keep typing in chat. But Kazi, what I would say to you is that first, the idea of talking to institutional donors, I think is fantastic. Anytime you have an opportunity to bring additional funding sources to the table to support the organization, and also to, by doing that, also in effect supporting the parent organization because they don't have to fund you as much potentially, really creates some flexibility for you. It creates some flexibility for the parent organization. So I think it's fantastic that you guys are taking a look at that. What I would encourage though is when a donor organization perhaps has a call for proposals and you have no way of identifying key contacts, I think the idea of an unsolicited proposal is fine. But separately, what I would really encourage you guys to do is actually reach out to them and get to know them. So as opposed to doing unsolicited proposals. And the reason for that is actually based on what Zareen shared earlier. And so if you recall, Zareen was talking earlier about having meetings with donors and funders where it gives them an opportunity to tell you what they like, what they don't like, what they like to support. And in the case of institutional donors very often have 3 to 5 year funding mandates. And so they have specific things that they're looking for. In addition to that, they tend to have very specific budget and timelines by which they distribute their funding over the course of those 3 years. And so the benefit for you meeting them, telling them about the BRAC story and the BRAC Social Innovation Lab story in particular, is that it gives them an opportunity to kind of give you suggestions and recommendations. A, are they a fit? B, does it fit within the timeline? C, do they, can they give you some insight about what their mandate is and what their priorities are that can help you tailor that proposal to make it very powerful for what it is that they're looking for. So my encouragement to you, Kazi, is to try and schedule meetings with these institutional foundations and donors. If they're local and you can meet face-to-face, fantastic. If not, doing it over Skype or Zoom would be amazing. It's an opportunity for you to meet, tell them your story, tell them your vision, tell them your values, tell them what your plan is, and get them to kind of open up and share what their priorities are, what their projects are, what they like to fund, what they don't like to fund, how much, when is the timeline on funding. So use that as a very important resource for you to then shape a tailored proposal specific to that organization. And institutional foundations really like to give that kind of feedback. They like to, for the most part, they do like to share ideas and tips and tricks about how you can tailor a proposal to increase the chance of success. So So maybe what I'll do is I'll pause there, Kazi, and then just see if anybody else has any experiences on pitching proposals to institutional foundations. Would love to hear some thoughts about what has worked for you and not worked for you in the past. So anybody willing to share? Yeah. Oh, Kazi, so thanks for sharing that. If you have a fundraising team within BRAC, as well said, like you have an amazing resource there. So definitely something to leverage. And I think that's something that you can really also tap into Vilgro with, is just their depth of experience on institutional funding and how you can learn from their experience and combine that with the experience of the BRAC team, I think will be really powerful for you. So yeah, so I would definitely encourage that for sure. So yeah, I am just as a transition point. Let me just see here. I'm going to share something with everybody here. This is a this is a project-based opportunity that the Canadian government is running. It does cover 3 countries in the region, at least related to the project. They also cover Mongolia. But what I would suggest is take a peek, see if it's a fit for you. It is not direct funding to you. However, the program will fund a volunteer resource for you for up to 1 year full time, which is obviously a long time and a lot of resource for you to have. So the program is called Unitera. I have popped it into the chat. So take a look at that, see if it's a fit for you as you go through. So just to give you a little bit of context there. So that's fantastic. Kazi, thanks for sharing that. Maybe what I'll do, Junaid, is I'll hand it over to you if you want to come off of mute and maybe share where you guys are at now in this process of kind of building up your fundraising journey with your new org, and maybe some of the either opportunities or questions that you guys have. So Junaid, over to you.
Thanks, Keith. So essentially at this point, it's fairly recent that you're working on serendipity, and we are kind of in process of exploring, all kind of options. And that has actually been a good learning as well, kind of looking at, different, the type of players out there. One good thing actually that has been beneficial for us has been that there is a business association of expats in Singapore who might or might not be able to help that much directly. But then since it's a diaspora sitting in Singapore, which is like, hub of a lot of activity in this region, what they're helping us do is connect with, a lot of different stakeholders. So earlier when we just started this call and we're talking about this, the ADB connection also came from someone who was part of their, one of the members who's working there. And then AWS head of ASEAN is also someone who's a diaspora and part of that organization. So sometimes I feel there might be people who might not directly be able to help you, but then they, in the network that they have, can be something more useful. So we are, at this point exploring all kinds of options, ranging from, corporate partnerships to all the way to agencies such as ADB and others, as well as any essential partner that is willing to sponsor or kind of provide us some kind of a barter. So we are just trying to have as diversified range, but that I think also comes with a bit of a challenge And that's one of the things we realized, if you're pitching to a business association like that, your pitch then needs to be a little bit more broader, because there are players who are, part of the presentation would be relevant to them, but other parts won't be. So, for instance, this gentleman was in the call previously, but we only, because we had touched on so many subjects, we briefly talked about impact and how we are trying to, measure impact with the startups in the program. But in their follow-up call, there were more questions related to that, because the mandate of ADB, obviously aligns more with the SDG goals. So knowing the audience, I think, and so that's one of the things you have to go back to, that how do we build a generic pitch deck as well? Because you could have people sitting in a meeting who are not necessarily all from the same backgrounds. So that has been the experience so far. And I feel that the approach in terms of the timelines and everything, it varies a lot. Some are more agile, some have more of a bureaucratic legacy of institutes that hinders the pace at which things work. And I think that's another reason to actually have more of a diversified approach, where you're not just, you're kind of hedging your risk, where you're not just going after one type of sponsors.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's interesting. Like in our particular context, as you say, sometimes you're pitching people and you actually don't know a lot about them. And also you're not 100% sure what you're bringing into the marketplace. And so how do you create a pitch that's effective in that context? And one thing I do want to acknowledge in your particular example is that we do know that, you guys are just getting launched. And so much of what you're going to be doing in the first year, at least, is going to be product market fit. In your community, what are what program or programs is really going to resonate? And that's through, a combination of resonating with entrepreneurs as well as resonating with donors and funders, right? So one of the things that I usually encourage people to do when they're building a general pitch is to really focus that pitch on, the vision. So what is the vision of the organization? What do you guys stand for? What are you guys trying to achieve? How are you trying to change the world? And as a part of that, then speak into what the plans are. So what are you guys, planning on launching in the first year, or planning on doing in the first year? And keeping that general enough that it invites dialogue and conversation. So if you're having a meeting with somebody, you can describe the organization and say, this is who we are, this is our vision. And then, from that vision, then you get a chance to talk about the types of initiatives you have. You then get a chance to talk about the team. So the team would come next to really reinforce that you guys are a team that can actually deliver what it is that you're looking for. And then what you can do is use, after that point in time, you can then kind of push it back to them and talk a little bit about what their initiatives are, what their priorities are, what are they trying to achieve, right? So in Zareen's case, are there corporates who are trying to do some very specific CSR initiatives, or is it a foundation that has a mandate of working, with female founders or people in small communities, or other sort of highly relevant mandates? So for me, it's always that kind of three-pronged, vision, plan, team as the general pitch, which kind of can invite people into, getting excited about what you do and how you do it. So those would be some things that I would definitely think about in terms of building.
And yeah, and I think you're spot on with that, because when we had our first major pitch happening, that was one of the discussions we did end up having within the team. Because they were like, oh, so this is an entity that wants to have a connection with, with the region, but in context of Singapore. So we were like, we had this discussion. We talked about, because it gets very tempting, to be very honest, when you're early on and you're trying to fundraise, and you're like, okay, you kind of, there's a temptation to kind of play to the audience
Mm-hmm.
that, okay, you know, this is their mandate. So how can we kind of like, you know, turn things around and like make ourselves fit into what they're looking for? But then I think what you're talking about is something we try to be consciously aware of, that who are we at the core and what is our essence? What are some of the, you know, check marks that we have, and those things we really don't compromise on in terms of like, you know, if we are specifically working in these sectors for whatever reason we have chosen that, we kind of stick with that. If we're talking about, you know, in this case, a regional accelerator program, then if there is a person on the other side who maybe doesn't have a primary interest in that, we choose to downplay it, maybe because perhaps that is not something that would be like, you know, with any sales pitch. But then we made an active effort to ensure that our core and essence doesn't get compromised, because then it becomes a very slippery slope, in my experience, where, you know, you just play to the audience, and then, you know, then the audience is kind of shaping what is going on rather than the other way around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, it's an interesting one, right? Because the temptation always is to, or I shouldn't say always, the temptation is so often to go to someone and say, hey, you know, this is what we're trying to do. Tell me all about what it is that you're doing. And then, as you say, like, play to the audience. That temptation is always strongest when one of two things is happening. One is we're either a brand new organization, as your organization is, or we are feeling tight on financial sustainability. And so really the goal from my perspective is get rooted in the plan. You know, so for all of us, it's really about making sure that we have a really strong plan. We know what our vision is. We know our 3-year plan. We know our 1-year plan. We've kind of mapped out how we want to be financially sustainable using the sustainability canvas. And then when you go into a conversation with a donor or a funder or a sponsor, then what you do is you absolutely get them talking about, you know, their mandate and their likes and their dislikes and what they're trying to achieve. But, you know, by us anchoring ourselves in kind of our plan, it really does give us an opportunity to say and speak back into their plans and say, your plans fit with our plans. Or actually what you're trying to do has nothing to do with what we want to do. And maybe I can make some recommendations for some other people for you to work with in the ecosystem. And sometimes I think that can be a challenge in the first year or two, right? When we're trying to be financially sustainable, is to live in that tension of saying no to certain things and yes to others. But it becomes a heck of a lot easier when you have a plan. Because then you know where you're going and you know what your priorities are. The benefit too is when you're talking to sponsors and corporates and you tell them what your plans are, even if it's not a fit for them, they know other CSR people, they know other foundations, and they can actually make suggestions and sometimes even introductions to those organizations that actually are aligned with our plans. So just something to think about as you kind of go down this path is, yes, you are doing customer discovery and really getting to know the ecosystem, but at the same time, you know, you guys want to ground yourself in that initial plan that you guys are building so that you can go out there with a lot of confidence and say, this is who we are, and this is what we stand for, and you know, here's the sandbox that we're playing in, right? Like here's the playground, but and there's lots of room in that playground to try different things, but we're still in that playground, right? And so I think just something to keep in mind as you go through that process. So, yeah. So I hope that helps. Yeah, for sure. That's great. Omar had to jump off. And so unfortunately he can't join us at the moment. You know, so for me, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. And so with Zareen and with Tashbia, Junaid, by default, you're kind of in this same place, is that you guys are working in the tension of trying to identify opportunities that will allow you to be full this year in 2019, but you're also looking for opportunities that will allow you to be financially sustainable in 2020 and beyond. And so one thing that I would encourage you guys to do is to start to map all of the opportunities that you guys have. And the math that I like to do in sort of in my head, and then we have it in a funnel. So kind of our list of opportunities, where in the perfect world, we have somewhere between, 2 and 5 times our target revenue inside our sales funnel. And so what I mean by that is the different project sponsors, funders, donors that we're talking to, when we start to estimate the dollar value of those, that it represents somewhere between 2 and 5 times what we intend to do as revenue. And the reason for that is because when we start with a list that's this long, say 10 or 20 organizations, it's going to shrink, right? They're going to lose budget. Someone's going to change jobs. They're going to lose their focus in a different way. And so for us, it's really important to know that you need to have more opportunities in your sales funnel than you can close, so that you actually hit the targets that you have in mind. And so one thing I would encourage you guys to do is to really start to think a little bit about what those extra opportunities are that you can pursue, and kind of drive things from there. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just see if, Kazi or Tashbia or Zareen, Junaid, if any of you guys want to share an example of an opportunity that you're currently pursuing that actually is for 2020. It's out there. And I'm just kind of curious about how that process is unfolding for you right now. I'd also love to know if you don't have anything in the sales funnel for 2020 and what you're hoping to do about that. So maybe I'll pause here and see if somebody wants to share. So maybe Zareen, if I can ask, do you have any opportunities at all that you're currently pursuing for 2020, or is all of the opportunities you're pursuing right now just for 2019?
So, hey Keith. So like I said, like right now, the two opportunities that we're pursuing, they are for this year. So they're gonna, they're going to be there like 5 and then 8. One is 5 and then other is right now one project is going to be, I think, maximum 6 months, but like it has the potential to keep going on. But then that is something that we set them up. We set a pilot and then we let others continue it. That's the whole point of that project. Like we just want to set a system for them, and then they need to carry it forward. Great. For right now, there's nothing. So the regenerative thing, the training and the training module that we want to do, that's something that we want to continue doing. So that is something that we will take up like for next year as well. Yeah. So, but like I said, like that's something still in development. So that's something that we have in mind for 2020. What shape it's going to take is a question mark right now. But that is something that we want to work 2020 and beyond.
Right. Yeah, and there, I think there may be a real opportunity for you between now and when you guys actually do create and detail out that program. I do think that there is an opportunity for you to start to explore new relationships with other donors and sponsors, just to start to share with what you guys do and how you do it. Start to build some relationships so that when you actually have this program defined, obviously you already have some warm relationships in place. But second of all, you may also uncover some other opportunities in the ecosystem that you guys can really jump on and actually provide as projects to the ecosystem that fit with what you're trying to achieve. So,
yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Keith. We've made a list of like partners and then sponsors that we ideally want to work with. But the only thing is we can't start pitching unless we know ourselves what we want to do first. So we're trying to fit the process of figuring what we want so that when we go out and start talking to people, we have that clarity. Because we just don't want to start talking about like and then keep on changing what we want from them. That I think creates a lot of confusion. So I think there is a lot of clarity that needs to be done on our side, and that's on us. So once we have that clarity, that's the kind of process we do. We've made a list of like, what sort of potential sponsors that are like partners that we want to work with, like, like other incubators or accelerators per se, or like other organizations such as UNDP or Oxfam who are very active in these kind of things in the ecosystem right now also. So we have those in mind, but like, since we don't know what we want to offer them right now is the part that is what we're trying to figure out. So yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. No, I would agree with you completely. I think you have to have a good understanding of your plan before you go out and really start to engage people. And I think that actually could be some work that you guys could do remotely with the Akina team, is just to work on the, kind of the foundation of your plan over, like in general. And then of course, when you get to New Zealand, you guys can really dig into the regenerative project work. But I do think that maybe digging into the plan a little bit in a general sense would also help you guys to kind of frame things and know at a high level what you guys can start to engage with corporates and donors on. So I think that's fantastic feedback. And then Kazi, I just put in a question for you in chat, because you were talking about some unsolicited proposals. And I'm just curious, like, do you guys feel like you have a plan that gives you enough specifics that you guys can go and pitch, or at least tell people what it is that you're planning on doing? So I'd love to hear, Kazi, from what you guys are thinking. Yeah. Okay. So Kazi, I mean, from your earlier comments, I did assume that your sales funnel was something to be built. So that's totally understandable. And then, just working on your plan to crystallize, I think is kind of that priority one with Vilgrow, which I think is fantastic. And you were already referring to that earlier, which I think is great. I think that's great. Thank you for that. Junaid, would love to know if any here has sought sponsorship and what was your offering? So Tashbia, Kazi, Zareen, have you guys secured sponsors in the past? And if so, for what?
So we've secured sponsorships for our conferences. So one of the conferences that we did last November was they were sponsored by Hashu Foundation, which was they gave us an in-kind for sponsorship. They gave us a venue. So and then we've also worked with British Council in like organizing a heritage marketplace. So those are the two sponsorships that we've had.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. Tashbia or Kazi, any other examples that you guys might have had in the past? Now, Tashbia, you may not know because you're relatively new to the organization, but just in case. In our case at Spring, and in particular, actually, Junaid, speaking to some of the sponsorships that I've seen in Asia, venue sponsorships, very common. I've seen the Canadian Embassy and the US Embassy do a lot of work around venue and event support. So food, drinks, and venue in Vietnam. In Cambodia with Impact Hub, they actually have a corporate sponsor for part of their co-working space, which they call the Innovation Garage. And so it's actually an organization that provides mobile payment solutions. It's a newer organization in town, entrepreneurial themselves, and therefore kind of, you know, in sync and with the tribe that is sort of, you know, social entrepreneurs. And so that actually is an example of a corporate sponsor in Cambodia. We've definitely seen a fair amount of event sponsorship as well. Venues and food and drinks, refreshments are probably the number one examples. We at Spring have also had corporate sponsors for very specific types of programs. Usually when the program content itself is aligned to what the organization does and or their CSR initiatives. So for us, that would include banks, insurance companies, accounting firms, and law firms. Those would be the big four in terms of categories for us. Yeah. Yeah, and then Kazi and Tashbia, thanks for your comments in chat. So BRAC not sought sponsorships in the past, but in-kind support is something that you're interested in, which is great. Venue and event sponsors, media sponsorships. Tashbia, great addition to the list. Having media sponsorships can be really helpful. So yeah, definitely a good category for, I think, all of us to pursue. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, great. Good. So I'm just going to take a look at my list. We've actually done a really good job of covering off some of the topics that I was hoping to cover myself. Yeah, I think the only other question that I had on my end as I look through my list is whether or not anybody has any questions about hiring people in advance of securing projects or after. And curious if any of you have gone through that process of kind of trying to decide, do you hire someone before a project is secured or after a project is secured? So I'm curious if anybody wants to share anything there. All right, quite all right. Just a topic that I thought might be of interest. It was actually one of the potential topics from seminar 1. And I think as, for example, Zareen, as you guys get into more sales funnel development, Kazi with BRAC, as you guys start to build your sales funnel up for the first time, and then Junaid, you know, building your organization up from scratch, I think that will be a question that comes up in the future. And I would encourage you guys to raise that topic in future sessions if it makes sense. So living in that tension of when do I hire someone relevant, you know, relative to when I want to, you know, when I believe that I can secure the actual project contract and know that I can pay them. So keep that in mind as we go through. So we are actually almost at the end of this session. We're actually about 10 minutes away from officially ending. Before I wrap everything up though, I'd love to see if anybody has any other burning topics or questions that you'd love to get covered off today, either by myself and or by Sana. So any and all questions here in the final 10 minutes. I'll keep an eye on chat as well. All right, so good. You guys have been amazing today. Thank you very much for everybody, coming off of mute and talking through some of the opportunities and some of the questions and challenges that you guys have faced. So thank you so much for that. It's been fantastic. What I just want to highlight to you guys is that the next session that we're going to be doing is on the 29th. And so that next session is going to be another webinar. And that one in particular is actually going to be on co-working space and events. So speaking of venue and event sponsorships, the next webinar topic will be on co-working space and events. And so we're actually potentially have at least one fantastic guest speaker on that topic, which I hope to announce to you guys in the next couple of days, which would be amazing. So if you guys are thinking about digging into events and conferences as a revenue stream, if co-working space is something you're either trying to optimize or add, then the next session on the 29th would be definitely one that you're going to want to keep an eye on. As we go through, as always, don't hesitate to drop us a note in Slack. You have myself, you have Sana, you have Liv as potential candidates to answer those questions for you. So please keep those questions coming. Really excited to hear them. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Any final questions before we break? All right, everybody.